All right, so back at it again, episode number 2, and today we're going to be talking to last season's champion, the Stallions. This podcast is brought to you by the Scorpions X. Liquid polymer. When you need your glue to glue, we've got you. This product works on metal, plastic, paper, and even wood. And now you can get your very own in a sparkly rainbow color. So what are you waiting for? Head over to scorpionsx.com and use promo code LIQUIDBINDER for an additional 50% surcharge. Let's get on with the podcast.
My team name is the Kentucky Stallions, and I have been here since season 1.
You had a little bit of a rough start to the season. What happened?
You know, man, we won a championship. I couldn't really believe it, even though we had a decent season. You know, my offense wasn't super offending. We traded a wide receiver because my quarterback, Case Tyson, demanded a lot of money. So I did have to give up a lot of key pieces of that team that won the championship. And there were a lot of rookies, and I think it just took a while for it to click.
How did you find the ACFL?
Yeah, so I've known Mango for a very long time, like 5.5 years or so. Like, we first met, I'd say April 2019. Yeah, he started this server called Country Simulator, and I could get into the deep lore of that, but yeah, him, and the Cowan Pissers all knew each other for a while, and he told me he was starting a Retro Bowl league and that he needed teams, so I gave Retro Bowl another shot. I didn't really play it much before, so my first couple seasons weren't too great, but I gradually understood the game.
Yeah. I've been looking at your past seasons, and you started off a little weaker, but you definitely grew.
Yeah.
So you've known the Pissers and Mango for a while. How have they evolved through this league?
You know, the Pissers were one of the top 3 at the start. They're still a very good team. Do got to give them respect, though. They have a salary cap of 150 million, and they recently upgraded it to 175 million. They never had unlimited, so for them to be doing as well as they are, that's pretty good. The Mangoes have always been an elite team. They went to the first 4 championships, and they are no small team to beat at all. Like, that is a big deal if you beat the Mangoes, even now.
And I was looking, and apparently they lost to the Scorpions 42-25. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was on call with the Detroit Mangoes when they were playing that game. He turned on his Five Nights at Freddy's playing music, we'll call it that, and he was pretty confident he would win because that's usually his winning strategy. And I guess it didn't work out. He said he's playing a very stacked team, but I do believe the Scorpions were as well. So maybe it was just unluckiness or whatnot, but I did experience that my first couple playoffs.
And looking at your score, you beat the Pissers by like a crazy amount. What happened there?
You know, I have 3 defensive backs, and they started absolutely garbage. Like, they would get scored on like crazy, and my secret was I put my defensive coordinator on hard training, which they got injured a couple times. It wasn't great. Later, it really started to like develop their potential because I drafted them like very low ranked, but like they had high potential or whatnot. So like they would develop pretty fast. So like that was a big factor, and I still have my linebackers from last season. So it's really defense. Like, Case Tyson does pretty well, but defense wins games. If you want to win championships, you need to invest in defense. Like, defense is the number 1 priority. It should always be in defense.
Do you see any rookies with potential next season?
I'd like to give an honorable mention to the Big Apple Juicers. They were not a rookie, but they started, I think they lost like the first 10 or 11 games of last season. They got a couple lucky wins toward the end, and no one really saw them as contenders. I think they were like pretty much the worst team in the league up to that point. But then they had a big turnaround, and they clinched the division. And, you know, I'm going to give a bonus shout out to them. The Big Apple Juicers, I think they have a lot going for them if they play their cards right. But the Swordfish, I don't think people talk about the Swordfish enough. The Swordfish have put a bunch of impressive scores up. The Swordfish did put up 53, which for a rookie team, that's amazing.
We got a couple of big games coming up. We have the Fire and the Death Rattle, and then we have the Dragons and the Juicers and your the CFC. What do you think about those 2 games? What are your predictions?
I think the Dragons are going to beat the Juicers. I feel like I could see the Juicers winning, but Birmingham Death Rattle, that's a hard one. That is a hard one. They're both very talented teams. I could see Death Rattle having a sleeper run here for the championship. I don't think people talk about Death Rattle enough.
Yeah.
They're always consistently good. They just got unlucky. So I think the Death Rattle could just take it. I mean, they have all they need.
I agree with the Dragons game. The Dragons are definitely a better team. They definitely have a bigger opportunity to win. For the Fire and the Death Rattle, it's gonna be really close. Yeah,
Yeah, for
I'll be
sure.
excited to see who wins that. All right, and then moving to the TFC, we have the Lancers and the Foxes. I'm gonna have to say the Foxes are gonna come out on top.
The Foxes winning that. The Foxes, like, I got to give a shout out to the Foxes. I didn't realize this till the other day. I was looking at their statistics. They have a total of 7 players. They have, like, I think
Dang.
it's 2 defensive linemen, 1 linebacker, and 1 defensive back, and then 2 wide receivers and a quarterback. All filled up on a cap space of 150 million. The Foxes to be scoring like they do, to be going 14-1, which is tied for the best record
Ever.
besides the Mangoes and the Cones. Like, that's pretty crazy. Got to give it to the Foxes.
And then we have three more games, which I'm not even gonna lie. I have very little chance of beating the Aviators. That's gonna be super tough, especially because I have to play a five-star defense, 5-star offense team.
I
So
think you have a chance. I think you have a good chance.
I will try my best. Cyborgs and Knights. I mean, the Cyborgs have had a come up. It's been crazy. Let's talk about that.
I'm not going to discredit the Cyborgs, but I'm feeling Knights. I think Knights are going to take it.
And then finally, we have my predecessors, the Wolves, taking on the Vikings. What do we think? What do we think about that?
Going to be a crazy game. I don't know about that one. That's just like Death Rattle and Fire. That's going to be a hot game.
Where did you get your team name and logo from? Who's your biggest rival in the league?
Probably the Mangoes. It started since like the very beginning of the league. The Mangoes, early contenders, they told me from the start, we're a bad team. Yeah, and they proceed to go like 13-2 or 12-3. I think it was 12-3. And I had 2 divisional games against the Mangoes. Magically beat them both times. That was crazy. Like they only lost 3 different times. 2 of them were me. And that kind of started the rivalry because the meme was the Stallions are supposed to be bad. So like how are we beating the Mangoes, right? That kind of sparked it. Since then it's always been back and forth. They beat me a lot. And then I got my get back a couple times and very back and forth.
What are your biggest tips for the ACFL new rookie teams joining?
One thing that a lot of players don't know, year 2, year 3 teams, like year 3, I think year 3 teams are kind of broken because you could get a lot of elite players, build them up over the next 2 years, have them on rookie contracts, and probably just get the best value to players like probably you'll ever get. Take advantage of that. You know, the first draft you ever have in year 2, like get a bunch of defensive players, get a half decent get a decent quarterback, like bounce stats, like about the same amount of arm strength and like accuracy. Like I'm not gonna get too specific for people, but like focus on like just a QB, a wide receiver, and balance out a defense like 2 DBs, 2 D linemen, 2 linebackers, and be smart with like how you manage your players and your restarts, especially. Yeah, manage your restarts very well. I always save like a restart for playoffs. That's something I always do.
What are the thoughts on the Kraken edits?
They I could tell you go and CapCut and just put a bunch of images on or whatnot. But you
No.
know what? You know what? They're funny. Like I remember you were gonna play the Mangoes, and I'm talking to Mango in a VC, and he's like, "If I lose to the Kraken, that'll be the worst thing that's ever happened to me because he'll drop an edit on me."
I
Like
still will.
at that point, I just wanted you to win more than anything.
Yeah, well, we've covered most of the things I wanted to talk about. I appreciate you for coming out and good luck in the playoffs.
No, thank you, man.
And if you enjoyed this episode, subscribe.